Improving data from Asia boosts the hope of a recovery of the global economy, and also the eurozone runs better. But what is behind all the news and figures? That's what I'm talking about with Stefan Schneider of Deutsche Bank Research. Mr. Schneider, how did the DBIX perform in August?
The DBIX should have inched up another tenth of a percentage point to 0.6 after a somewhat stronger improvement in July. So the global economy is on a gradual recovery pace, and it's basically fueled by better numbers coming out of Asia and Europe.
Looking at Asia, especially at China, we see quite good figures right now. What is behind that?
Yeah, quite good. I mean, it's always against the concerns that China might move towards a hard landing, which was prevailing just a few weeks ago. And now we have seen the most recent PMI figures, which are above the boom-bust threshold of 50. We have seen some better credit growth numbers and investment numbers. So it seems that the economy is gaining traction, that maybe the 7.5% in Q2 was the trough of the economic cycle, maybe slightly lower number in Q3, but then Q4, again, a pickup in growth. But it's largely fueled by credit growth and investment spending. It's not fueled by the external side. If you look at the new export orders in the PMI, they are actually pretty sluggish.
Also, the US has presented figures for gross domestic product, which was very positive, like 2.5%. Yeah. Could this also boost the global economy?
To a certain extent, yes. That was the second estimate, the upward revision from the initial estimate, which was 1.7 to 2.5. But you have to have in mind these are quarterly annualized figures. So in kind of European measure, you have to divide it by 4, and then they look somewhat less impressive. If you look at the reasons for the upward revision, it was mainly better net exports. And given the overall global environment, this is unlikely to continue. But the domestic side, especially the income side, is still relatively weak. Therefore, I don't think that the US is on a very strong growth dynamics. And I don't think that the US will become the global growth locomotive over the next quarters.
Okay, so the US can't help Europe in the,
no.
in the growing. But we have seen a recovery in the eurozone in the second quarter of this year.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for the whole year?
Now, a recovery is maybe too much of a word, but after 6 quarters of decline, we had a positive quarter-on-quarter change, GDP growth of 0.3. It was largely driven by the 2 large economies, Germany and France, which had surprisingly strong numbers, which are partly one-offs. But still, by now, if we look at other indicators as well, it seems like, modest growth can be maintained in the second half of the year, which means that although GDP on an annual average will shrink by another 0.4 probably, but it's not as bad as the previous year where it shrank by 0.6.
Okay. So we will talk about the euro crisis and new aid packages later on. Thank you so far, Mr. Schneider. Signs of recovery in the eurozone, but not everywhere. The Greek drama continues to unfold. We will talk about this later on, and you can watch the full interview on dw.de/English/Made in Germany.